In one shocking email, I learned that a simple DNA test had unraveled a web of infidelity, one that stretched back through generations and was echoing in my own secret present-day affair. My world, once built on trust and familiar faces, was suddenly filled with lies, betrayal, and painful truths. I always believed my life was simple and my family bonds unbreakable. Growing up in a modest Midwestern town in the United States, I never doubted the honesty and love that had defined my childhood. My father was a steady, hard-working man, and my mother exuded kindness and warmth. Yet one ordinary evening, a single email shattered the very foundation of my identity. A DNA test result that revealed secrets I was never meant to know. I had ordered the test on a whim, spurred by a magazine article about uncovering hidden ancestry. I imagined learning about distant cousins and fascinating roots from far-off lands. I was excited and curious. When the email arrived, I remember sitting alone at my small kitchen table, the glow of the screen reflecting in my wide, anxious eyes. I clicked open the message, expecting a routine summary of my genetic makeup. Instead, as I scrolled through the results, my heart began to pound in my chest. At first, I saw the expected mix. Hints of European, traces of Native American, and a small percentage of African heritage. But then I noticed a detail that made me stop cold. A close genetic match with someone whose name and profile I had never heard of. The report claimed I shared an almost immediate familial connection with this mysterious individual. I felt as if a piece of a puzzle had been inserted that didn't belong, a piece that suggested my family history was not as straightforward as I'd always believed. My mind raced with questions. Who was this person? Why was their connection to me hidden in plain sight? I tried to recall every snippet of family lore, every whispered conversation overheard in the background of family gatherings, but nothing prepared me for this revelation. The possibility that either my father or my mother might have kept secrets from me began to settle in like a chill that I couldn't shake off. Unable to contain my anxiety any longer, I called my father that same night. I remember the tremor in my voice as I asked him about the mysterious match. His tone was cautious, his words measured. Family history can be complicated, he said, offering a vague promise to look into it. But even his reassurances couldn't hide the hesitation in his voice, a hesitation that only deepened my fears. Had he known more than he was letting on? As the night wore on, I sat in my living room, my thoughts swirling. I couldn't help but wonder about my mother, the gentle woman who had always seemed to carry a quiet sadness behind her eyes. Had she been living with a secret of her own? Memories of times when she appeared distracted or unusually somber now took on a new, haunting meaning. The realization that the DNA test hinted at a long legacy of infidelity, spanning generations, made my heart ache with both anger and sorrow. I began to imagine a family tree not of branching, simple roots, but one riddled with hidden affairs and painful betrayals. The idea that the very blood that connected me to my loved ones might be stained by secrets was almost too much to bear. In that moment, I understood that the simple life I thought I knew was merely a facade, concealing decades of lies and heartache. The email's revelation felt like an open invitation to dig deeper into a past filled with untold stories. I knew that my journey into the truth would force me to confront painful memories and challenge the very notion of trust. As I closed my eyes that night, I felt an unsettling mixture of dread and determination. I was on the verge of discovering that the infidelity woven through my family's history was not a relic of the past alone. It was a living, breathing part of my present. And even as I wrestled with this shock, I couldn't shake the feeling that my own heart was already beginning to echo the betrayal. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of a long and painful journey that would soon blur the lines between the past and my own secret, dangerous affair. After that shocking night, I knew I had to dive deep into my family's hidden history. I couldn't let the mystery of that DNA test rest unanswered. I began asking questions, quietly at first, and soon, every family story I had taken for granted turned into a clue. It felt as if the past was calling out to me, begging to be heard. One rainy afternoon, I found myself at my mother's old home, a place filled with memories of simpler times. The house, tucked away on a quiet street in the United States, held decades of secrets in its dusty corners. I wandered from room to room until I discovered a box in the attic, tucked behind old furniture and forgotten keepsakes. Inside, I uncovered stacks of faded letters, weathered diaries, and black and white photographs that spoke of another era. A time when words were written by hand and every letter carried the weight of unspoken truths. I began with a stack of letters bound together with a worn ribbon. One letter, in particular, caught my attention. It was written by my grandmother, a woman whose smile had always hidden a hint of melancholy. In that letter, she described a secret romance, a forbidden love that had caused a deep rift in her life. As I read her words, I felt the sting of betrayal and the ache of loss. I could hardly believe that the infidelities hinted at in that letter might have been the very foundation on which our family had built its lives. The more I read, the more I realized that the pattern of betrayal ran deeper than I ever imagined. My heart pounded with a mix of anger, sorrow, and an overwhelming need to understand. Was it possible that the carefully maintained image of my parents had been nothing more than a carefully constructed facade? I needed answers, and the dusty pages of these letters promised to give me just that. That evening, I sat down with my mother. I had always seen her as the gentle heart of our family, yet I noticed a guarded look in her eyes, a look that I now knew carried decades of hidden pain. "Mom," I said softly as we sat together in the quiet of our living room, "I found something in these letters. Something that makes me wonder about our past." I could feel her tense up as if my words had cut straight to a well-kept secret. After a long, heavy silence, she finally spoke. "There are stories in our family that are better left in the past," she murmured, her voice trembling with the weight of memories. Slowly, she began to share bits and pieces of our history. A secret affair, a hidden child, and a betrayal that had shattered her own heart long before I was born. I listened, each revelation deepening my sense of loss and confusion. How could the people I had trusted the most carry such scars? Not long after that conversation, I met with my Uncle James at a small diner in our town. He had always been the quiet observer in family gatherings, and I suspected he might know more than he let on. Over coffee, he leaned forward and whispered, "Your grandmother's heart was broken long before you knew her. There was a man she loved, a man who was not your grandfather, and that love cost her dearly." His eyes darted around, as if fearful that someone might be listening. His admission sent a shiver down my spine, confirming that the seeds of deceit had been planted long ago. Days later, as I pieced together these scattered clues, the tension in my chest grew with each passing moment. I began to understand that the betrayal I was now facing was not a modern mistake. It was the legacy of a family defined by hidden affairs and silent sufferings. Just when I thought I had a grasp on the past, fate intervened once again. Late one chilly evening, a sharp knock at my door startled me. I opened it to find a battered envelope addressed in a handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside, a letter from a distant relative, a person I had only heard about in hushed family whispers, awaited me. The letter hinted at even darker secrets, suggesting that the betrayal stretched further back than anyone had ever dared to speak about. My hands shook as I read the final lines. The past was not just a series of painful memories. It was a labyrinth of lies that threatened to consume everything I thought I knew about my family. Standing there with the letter clutched in my hand, I realized that every answer I found only led to more questions. I was now on a path from which there was no turning back, a journey into a history of deceit that would forever alter my understanding of love, loyalty, and trust. And as the echoes of the past reverberated in my heart, I knew that uncovering the truth would demand even greater courage than I had ever imagined. In the weeks that followed the discovery of my family's hidden past, my world became a tangled mess of old wounds and new risks. The painful truths from the letters and whispered confessions still echoed in my mind. Yet in the midst of this storm, I found myself drawn to a dangerous new passion, one that felt both like a reprieve and a repetition of the betrayals I had only just begun to understand. It started on an ordinary day when I visited a small, independent bookstore near my office. I'd always loved the smell of old paper and the quiet refuge among the shelves. That day, while browsing through a section of forgotten classics, I caught the eye of a man leaning against a shelf. His name was Nathan. There was something in his warm, steady gaze that made me feel understood, as if he saw the chaos inside me. We exchanged polite smiles, and soon, conversation sparked like a hidden flame. Nathan had a quiet charm that pulled me in. His voice was calm and reassuring, and he listened without judgment as I casually mentioned the pressures of everyday life. I couldn't share the real reasons behind my troubled thoughts. Those secrets were too raw, too personal. Instead, I spoke in half-truths about the disappointments of my past and the betrayals that life sometimes dealt. In return, he opened up about his own struggles, about trust lost and love found again. The honesty between us was rare, and it lit a spark that I had not felt in years. Before long, our encounters grew more frequent. Secret rendezvous became my escape. Whether it was meeting in a quiet park under the gentle fall of autumn leaves or a hidden corner in a late-night diner, Every moment with Nathan was charged with the thrill of forbidden connection. But with each stolen kiss and every whispered promise, the weight of my family's legacy pressed heavily on my heart. I couldn't help but wonder if I was doomed to repeat the past. A past where infidelity and betrayal had run unchecked for generations. At first, I told myself that this was different. I believed that I could keep my life separate, the painful history that haunted my family on one side, and the fresh passion of this new relationship on the other. However, the more I immersed myself in Nathan's arms, the more my guilt grew. It was as if my heart was caught in a tug-of-war between the desire for love and the fear of becoming the very person whose secrets had shattered my understanding of trust. One rainy evening, as I waited in a dimly lit cafe for Nathan, a sense of dread crept over me. I had just left a tense conversation with a friend who hinted that they'd heard murmurs of my secret meetings. My phone buzzed unexpectedly. A message from an unknown number. The text was short and chilling. "I know what you're doing. We need to talk." In that moment, the danger of my choices felt all too real. I glanced around the cafe, half expecting to see someone watching, someone who had followed me from the shadows of my past into my present. The message rattled me. Could someone from my family's dark history be connected to my current secret? Or was it the work of someone else entirely? A rival or a wronged lover of Nathan's? My pulse raced as I clutched the phone, torn between the desire to ignore the threat and the need to confront it. Every instinct screamed to run, but my curiosity and fear rooted me to the spot. That night, as I left the cafe with my heart pounding, I realized that the line between the legacy of old betrayals and the danger of my present choices was blurring. I was trapped between two worlds, one of inherited deceit and one of personal risk. And as I stepped into the rain-soaked streets, I couldn't shake the thought that the secrets of my family were not done with me yet. The collision of past betrayals and my present transgressions grew impossible to ignore. Every secret I had unearthed, every whispered confession from long ago, now came crashing down on me as I faced the people I once trusted. I realized that the hidden affairs of my family were not distant echoes but living shadows, following me into every corner of my life. It began on a gray Saturday afternoon when I returned home after a tense meeting with Nathan. My heart was heavy with the weight of guilt and fear, and I knew that I had to confront the legacy that haunted me. I had arranged a family dinner, a meeting that I dreaded yet knew was necessary, to finally force open the door to these buried truths. My mother, my father, and my Uncle James all gathered in the modest dining room of our old family home. The table, set with care and the familiar clatter of china, now became a stage for a painful drama. I cleared my throat as I began. "I found another letter today. It's from a relative I never knew existed, and it talks about secrets that go back even further than we ever imagined." My voice trembled with emotion, and the room fell into an uneasy silence. My mother's eyes widened, and my father's gaze dropped to the table as if he were ashamed. Uncle James shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his hands trembling slightly on his coffee cup. "My mother, why didn't you ever tell me about these things?" I demanded softly, yet firmly. All these years, I believed our family was honest and united. But now every story, every lie, makes me question everything. My words hung in the air like a challenge. For a long moment, my mother said nothing. Then, her voice, choked with regret, broke the silence. "There were reasons," she whispered. "Reasons I thought would protect you. But sometimes, the truth is more dangerous than the lies we choose to live." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she recalled a past filled with forbidden love and shattered promises. She told me of a secret romance, one that had fractured her spirit and left scars that never fully healed. In that confession, I recognized the patterns of betrayal that had defined not just her life, but our entire family. Before I could ask further, the doorbell rang, shattering the fragile calm of our gathering. I excused myself and opened the door to find Nathan standing on our doorstep, his eyes dark with worry and anger. "We need to talk," he said in a low, urgent tone. I could see that he, too, felt the strain of our tangled lives, the hidden affair now clashing violently with the raw family revelations unfolding inside. Reluctantly, I let him in. Inside, his presence added another layer of tension to the already charged atmosphere. In a hushed conversation away from the dinner table, Nathan confronted me. "I've been hearing whispers, secrets that tie your family's past to our present," he said, his voice tight with hurt. "I trusted you, and now I wonder if I'm just another link in this chain of deceit." His eyes searched mine for answers, for any sign that I could promise him honesty. But I could only offer a quivering apology and the painful admission that I was drowning in the very legacy of betrayal I had spent my life trying to understand. Back at the table, Uncle James added another layer of complexity to our conversation. "Our family has always been tangled in secrets," he said quietly, as if confessing a long-held burden. "Betrayal isn't new to us. It's been the silent force driving us apart for generations." His words, though meant to explain, only deepened my sense of isolation. I realized that I wasn't just fighting for my own truth. I was trying to break a cycle that had haunted every generation before me. As the dinner ended and we began to clear the table, the air was thick with unresolved questions and shattered trust. I felt torn apart by the conflicting loyalties, the love I had for my family and the dangerous passion I shared with Nathan. Every confrontation, every painful revelation, chipped away at my identity, leaving me raw and exposed. Just when I thought the evening might offer some clarity or a chance at healing, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Hesitantly, I answered. A familiar, trembling voice whispered, "There's one more secret you need to know." Before I could ask who it was or what secret lay hidden behind those words, the call ended abruptly, leaving me in a void of dread. I realized that as the past and present collided, the truth was still not fully revealed, and that the worst may yet be coming. In that moment, I understood that the battle for truth was far from over. Each confrontation had unraveled a thread in the fabric of my family's history, and I stood on the precipice of even darker revelations. The collision was not just of memories and betrayals, but of a future that promised more pain, more secrets, and perhaps, a chance to finally break free from the legacy of infidelity that had defined us for so long. In the weeks following that fateful phone call, I found myself at a crossroads. The weight of my family's dark past and the painful present of my own betrayals pressed heavily on me. I realized that if I was to survive this storm of secrets, I needed to embrace the chance for redemption. A chance to redefine who I was beyond the legacy of infidelity that had haunted my bloodline. I began by distancing myself from the chaos. I left behind the late-night meetings and the whispered confessions, seeking solace in the quiet corners of my own thoughts. I enrolled in a local art class and spent hours at a nearby park, letting the gentle rhythm of nature calm my turbulent heart. Slowly, I learned to listen to the small voice inside me that urged forgiveness, first for myself and then, eventually, for those who had wronged me. One crisp autumn morning, I decided it was time to confront my past in person. I reached out to my mother, inviting her for a walk along the river that had witnessed so many of our family's memories. As we strolled side by side, the cool breeze carrying the scent of fallen leaves, she looked at me with eyes that held both sorrow and a spark of hope. "I never wanted you to carry this burden," she said softly, her voice trembling with regret. In that moment, I understood that the lies of our past were woven out of pain and survival, not malice. It was not an excuse, but it offered a glimpse of a way forward. That afternoon, I also met with Nathan in a quiet cafe tucked away from the prying eyes of the city. Our conversation was raw and honest. Two people battered by secrets, trying to find a way to rebuild trust. "I know I have hurt you," I admitted, my eyes fixed on the worn table between us. I was lost, trying to escape a past that I never chose. Nathan reached out, his hand steady and reassuring. "Maybe our scars can teach us to be stronger," he replied. "We can choose a different path." In that quiet exchange, the promise of a new beginning emerged, a future where the mistakes of yesterday would no longer define us. With time, I began to mend not only my relationship with those closest to me, but also the fractured parts of my own soul. I sought therapy and joined a support group where I met others whose lives had been upended by secrets and betrayal. Their stories resonated with mine, and I discovered that redemption was not a destination but a continuous journey, a series of small, brave steps toward healing. As I embraced the healing process, I made amends with family members who had been caught in the web of deceit for generations. I listened to their stories, shared my own pain, and slowly we began to piece together a narrative that was not solely defined by betrayal. My family dinners, once shrouded in tension, turned into moments of tentative reconciliation, as we learned to forgive and to let go. I realized that by accepting our shared past, we could create a future free from its shadows. Just as I felt the first glimmers of hope, life reminded me that some mysteries never fully disappear. One evening, while cleaning out old boxes in the attic, I uncovered a faded photograph and a note scribbled on its back. The note hinted at another secret, a part of the family story that had yet to be told. My heart skipped a beat. Was this the final piece of the puzzle, or the beginning of a new chapter of uncertainty? I closed my eyes, knowing that even in the midst of healing, life could surprise me once again. Yet, despite the lingering questions, I chose to move forward with courage and determination. I was no longer the same frightened girl who had once sat at a kitchen table staring at a DNA test result. I was a survivor, determined to write a new story. A story of redemption, love, and the strength to overcome the past. Thank you for following my journey. If my story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories of hope, healing, and the power of truth.